So this past week has seen a number of politicians, pundits, authors using the immigration issue and some of the recent quotes by Donald Trump to make the case and drive home the idea that recent illegal immigrants are the cause of any number of violent crimes, property crimes in America. And they do that, of course, without any actual information, any actual studies to defer to. So we're going to fix that right now. We're going to show you some actual information about both the rates of crime of undocumented immigrants compared with American citizens. And we're also going to correct what I think is a very commonly believed myth about immigration from Mexico and other Latin American and South American countries. So first of all, to the crime. Immigrants to the U.S. are far less likely to wind up in the criminal justice system than native-born Americans, according to data from the 2010 American Community Survey. 3.3% of males between the ages of 18 and 39 who were born in the U.S. have been incarcerated. That's compared to only 1.6% of immigrants in the same age range. So again, this is males between 18 to 39, prime crime age, half as likely to have interacted with the criminal justice system in the past. That is amazing. How is that not front page news in a time when we're talking about these allegations that everyone coming over the border from Mexico is a rapist?
Right, and even if you're not seeing this story on the front page of a newspaper, all you have to do is really think about it for a second. People who enter the United States illegally are leaving everything that they know behind, including their friends and their families in a lot of cases, because they realize that the economic situations there or just the living conditions there are not good for them. It's either not safe or it's not financially stable enough, and that's why they come to the United States. They're doing it because they want better opportunities for themselves and their children. So what do they do knowing that they've entered this country illegally? Well, they stay as low-key as possible. They try to earn as much money as possible doing these jobs that, of course, don't pay that well. And that's it. They're trying to stay out of trouble. I'm very curious to see what percentage of those who do get incarcerated because they entered the country illegally.
Exactly. I mean, if you were to take those out, it might be that 1.6 would drop down even farther. Exactly. I mean, we don't have a specific breakdown of violent crimes and property crimes for these stats. We only have the raw number who've interacted with the criminal justice system. But that would be an amazing follow-up study.
Right.
Now, we have a little bit of more information in this same, the same angle. Further, uneducated immigrants from places like Mexico, El Salvador, and Guatemala have a much lower incarceration rate than uneducated people born in the U.S. In fact, they also have a lower incarceration rate than educated people born in the U.S.
That is incredible.
I mean, this isn't even a matter of like, oh, well, you're only comparing engineers from Mexico to regular people from the U.S. No, we're talking about people who come in to do the lowest skilled sort of labor. They still do their damnedest to not commit any crimes while they're here for perhaps the exact reasons that Anna was pointing out earlier.
Exactly. And, you know, a lot of these people do come into the country and they do take the jobs that are considered low-skilled, right? Because they can't show their education or some of the information that you would need for a high-paying job, right? So they're working on farms, they're working for tiny little wages, and people keep making arguments that, hey, even if they're not involved in violent crimes and even if they're not getting incarcerated at as high of a rate as U.S. citizens, they're still taking our jobs. But there are so many studies indicating that the positive impact that they've had on the economy outweighs the negative impact. Now, the negative impact that they've had is they do take jobs from low-skilled workers, keeping it real. But they actually complement those who do a lot of the jobs that require high skills. So like, for example, a carpenter or an engineer or something like that, they will do the grunt work for that individual so that person can focus on their highly specialized job. And that actually adds a lot more to the economy. I know I kind of went off on a tangent with the economy thing.
Interesting information stuff.
But yeah, I looked into that a lot, and it's really interesting stuff.
Yeah, and what's most amazing is, I mean, look, there's been national fear and panic about immigration going back literally since the beginning of the United States. There's always some group that we're worried is going to come in and they're not going to adopt our culture and they're going to drink and they're going to whore and they're going to do their crimes and all of that. That's as American as apple pie. But especially over the past couple of decades, as I think the Republican Party has begun to realize that it is increasingly difficult to be openly discriminatory and exploitative when it comes to African Americans. They can't use that as much to rile up their voters, but they have gotten away with continuing to demonize immigrants from Mexico, particularly amongst other countries, now Muslim Americans as well, but especially that. They've been doing this, and you understand that over the past 2 decades or so, 3 decades, they've been doing this as actual crime rates have fallen amazingly. So between 1990 and 2013, as a percentage of the population born outside of the U.S. grew from 7.9% of the total population to 13.1%. So more and more immigrants of both the legal and illegal variety are coming in. The violent crime rate decreased by almost half, and property crime dropped by 41%. But you don't hear politicians talking about that. You certainly don't hear them talking about specifically that as we're getting more and more immigrants who, by the way, are not committing crimes, that it's benefiting us. We should want more of them since they're apparently the best sorts of workers.
For those who like to speak out against immigrants in the United States, keep in mind that for the vast majority of them, they don't care about the data and they don't care about the evidence.
Yeah.
So just one example that I think kind of summarizes that point is the DREAM Act, the federal DREAM Act. Now, currently in California, we successfully passed the state's version of the DREAM Act, which would allow people who were smuggled into the United States as children an easier pathway to citizenship. So if you complete your education, if you serve in the military, if you do things that prove that you're a productive member of society, then you become an American citizen. And we were unable to do that federally because Republicans do not care whether or not you're a productive member of society. They don't care if you came into the country with your parents when you're 3 years old and you don't know anything about the country that you originated from. They don't care how productive you are. It's us versus them. It's whites versus browns. It's the way it's always been. So this evidence means nothing to them. You think they don't know this stuff? They know this stuff. But what they see...
I default to them not knowing much of anything.
I mean,
I think some of this
I think that's a very
to
comfortable thing to believe, right? Because we want to believe, oh, it's ignorance. But I don't think it's ignorance. I think this is more about hate than anything else.
Anyway, early on I said that we're also going to break one of the myths that maybe some of you knew about. I certainly did not. And this is coming about as a result of a PolitiFact sort of breakdown of the facts coming from Bill Clinton's recent appearance on The Daily Show, where he said, basically, between 2010 and 2014, there was no net in-migration from Mexico. That surprise you all? As all we read about is the violence and the drug war. The truth is that the previous president built 140 tuition-free universities. 2 years ago, the Mexicans produced 113,000 engineers. We produced 120,000. They've had very brisk growth, and except in the narco centers, the crime rate, the murder rate has gone down. It's a very interesting country. Now, I want to focus on the first part of that, where he said there has been no net in-migration from Mexico, which blew my mind. Arena, our executive producer of the main show, she apparently knew it. I assume many people did, but it was news to me. And so they looked into it, and yes, it's entirely true. Now, they don't know about for the end of 2014. That data isn't currently in. But for the rest of the period that Bill Clinton is talking about, there are actually more people going back to Mexico from the United States than there are coming in from Mexico.
Right.
That's amazing.
So the trend slowly started in 2008 when our economy crashed. And so there was really no incentive for Mexicans to come into the country illegally because, first of all, it's tremendously risky to enter the country illegally to begin with. Those trying to smuggle you in can take advantage of you. A lot of women have been raped by them as a result. There have been stories of Border Patrol agents, American citizens working for us, raping and doing violent things toward those who are trying to enter the country illegally. So there's a tremendous risk when you think about the initial action of coming into the country. But then on top of that, you're going to take the risk for what? For a terrible economy? So I am not surprised by this news at all, and the trend continued. So you're right, we don't have the latest figures for what occurred last year, but what we do know is that Mexicans do not want to come to the country as much as they did back in the day.
Yeah, or there might be fewer of them to come. So we have some information showing that historically the birth rates that led to a lot of migration decades ago, that leveled off. And then there was not this big cohort of young Mexicans looking for jobs. Now, they could have come here and not found them, as Anna was saying, but they didn't even exist to come. And some of you might say, well, look, this could be the result of better border security that's stopping them from coming in. And there's also an indication that only about half are being stopped at the border than were in years past, which implies that they're not coming at all, or that many of them are leaving because we're successfully identifying them and deporting them. Well, that's fine. You can make that case if you want, but then you can't also make the case that Obama hasn't done the right thing when it comes to border security and he's not getting rid of these people. Apparently, the problem has either solved itself or Obama has solved it during the time period we're talking about. And so for Trump to make sort of as the main plank of his presidential run that he's going to build a wall at the border, you can build that wall, but apparently nobody's going to walk up to it from the other side.